Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live stream on the LT World YouTube channel. Let me know if the audio is good if you're in the live chat. And to interact with the live chat, you have to be a subscriber. So go ahead and do that. But yeah, today we are going to be reacting to how the universe was created according to Hinduism. Might also do another video about Hinduism. I've been releasing, in the past, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, I released a couple videos about Hinduism so far. I'm starting to study it a little bit. So I've been getting intrigued by it a bit. So trying to learn more and delve into the topic. But yeah, so today I'm going to be reacting to how the universe was created according to Hinduism. But I would understand though, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. I thought there's multiple creation stories within Hinduism, but I could be wrong about that. Maybe they'll cover that in the video. I haven't watched it yet, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, if you like this type of content where I react to other religions and you like to learn more about other religions, hear sort of different perspectives, comparison, things like that when it comes to the religions in the world, and also just visiting different places and doing things like that on this channel. That's what we're here to. We're here to engage with different cultures, entertain, make entertaining content while doing it, and hopefully you learn something. Hopefully you're educated at the end of the day, and learn something new and have a new perspective on life. So, yeah. So I hope today we can do all of that. If you like this video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to become part of the Light the World community, and to be able to be updated on future videos. And let me know in the comments. Let me know if you find what type of stuff you want me to react to. Let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on these creation stories, the things you see in this video. And if you're in a live chat, interact with me and ask questions, discuss. And I like to interact with you guys on these live streams. I find it fun. I find it enjoyable being able to discuss with you guys, react together to these videos, and ask questions and things. So it's always a fun time on this channel. Giving a couple minutes maybe for anyone who's just hopping on. But of course, if you're watching this after the live stream, you can always skip ahead a couple minutes and you'll get right into the video, get right into the content. But yeah, I always enjoy doing these I enjoy doing these live streams and stuff because it's a way for me to interact with you guys and to have fun. And I'm always glad to see the people who are supporting this channel. And since this is a comparative religion channel, this is what I do. I explore different religions. I explore different belief systems. Whether or not I agree with them, that's a whole nother story. But like, I just like to learn about other faiths because it's by understanding other people, by understanding other religions, that enables us to have better conversations, enables us to get along better, and helps us to have more thoughtful conversations in our own real lives. When we interact with people who believe differently than us, or even if you're trying to convince someone to believe what you believe, it's important to first understand what they actually believe to present the best arguments and stuff. So that's what I try to do here, trying to understand other beliefs. And part of that is reacting to videos like this one and doing live streams and then interacting with all of you. But yeah, so with all that being said, I think I'll hop into the video, get started, and I'll give you my thoughts as someone who happens to be a Christian and is not a Hindu. I'll kind of give you my thoughts along the way, maybe do some comparison and see how the universe is created according to Hinduism. 2.3 million views, so it seems like this is a pretty popular video.
The universe is a mystery that has always puzzled mankind. How was it created? And who is responsible for creation? In Hinduism, there are many theories about how the
right.
universe
There are many
was
theories.
created in the earliest days. Let's explore some of them. In Hinduism, the universe is not one single entity. There are an infinite number of universes that are constantly being created and destroyed. In other words, we live in a universe that belongs to a multiverse. A universe will ultimately die, but the multiverse lives on. Lord Vishnu...
Interesting. The reason why I find that interesting is because there's a lot of scientific theories out there about the multiverse. Like, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Stephen Hawking proposed a multiverse at one point. I know some other astrologists and scientists and physicists have proposed something similar to the multiverse. So this is actually something that's seen within as theoretical science within modern day secular science. And generally speaking, when I've heard the multiverse proposed, I've heard it proposed as a secondary explanation besides God. So, like when it comes down to the atheism versus theism argument, I've generally heard the multiverse being proposed as another way that the universe may have been created without God. So I haven't never really heard it in a religious sense. I've heard it in a secular sense. But I'm kind of curious how the multiverse plays into Hinduism here in regard to the creation of the universe. I'm going to check audio here real quick. Whoa. Let's calm down there. Check audio here real quick. All right, it looks like it's all leveled out. Good. Okay, so let's hop back in.
Is a personification of this multiverse. According to Hinduism, Lord Vishnu was asleep in the cosmic ocean of all causes before the creation of the universe. His bed is a giant serpent with thousands of cobra-like hoods. The universe was created in a triad of roles: creator, maintainer, and destroyer.
Wait, do they believe that the multiverse has always existed? Is that what they're saying? Lord Vishnu is asleep in cosmic ocean. Is the cosmic ocean the universe? Well, ultimately...
But the multiverse lives on. Lord Vishnu is a personification.
Okay. So Lord Vishnu is a personification of the multiverse. So the multiverse is basically a god of its own sort. It's sort of like its own spiritual god, its own sort of entity. If anyone knows better than I, you can let me know. But that's the idea I'm getting here, is that Hinduism proposes that the multiverse, or this sort of multiple universes, is a god of sorts. It's a spiritual entity of some sort, and it's just personified as Lord Vishnu.
According to Hinduism, Lord Vishnu was asleep in the cosmic ocean of all causes before the creation of the universe. His bed is a giant serpent with thousands of cobra-like hoods. The universe was created in a triad of roles: creator, maintainer, and destroyer. Lord Vishnu.
So I'm assuming when it says universe, it's referring to our universe specifically. That's what I'm assuming. Or else it's because if the multiverse has multiple universes, all those universes either had to exist, or some of them had to exist, and then some of them were created, or all of them were created within this multiverse. So I'm assuming they're talking about our universe specifically.
Maintainer. Lord Brahma is the creator. Lord Shiva is the destroyer. The universe was created through the actions of Lord Vishnu, who slept and let a lotus bloom from his navel. The lotus stem represents the creation of the universe, while Brahma is found at the flower's center and represents the creator. The time it takes for one universe to be created and the next one to end is also the duration of one breath of Lord Vishnu. When he exhales, thousands of universes come into being and a new Brahma is born in each one. But when Lord Vishnu inhales, all universes get sucked in and Brahma dies. Lord Brahma represents the universe that we live in. He creates all life forms and is responsible for the physical world that we live in. Lord Vishnu is the personification of the eternal multiverse. He is responsible for the continuation of life in all universes. Brahma is...
I'm trying to figure out how literal this is meant to be interpreted. Like, I'm not sure if this is all supposed to be figured, because it is saying like Lord Vishnu is a personification of this multiverse. So when they say personification, is that like this is how we understand it, but in reality we don't really actually know what it looks like and how it behaves and stuff? It's sort of a mystery, but this is how it's portrayed. Like, is it supposed to be all figurative, or is it actually meant to be taken very literally? Like, literally, Lord Vishnu, for every breath of Lord Vishnu, the universes are created and destroyed? Or is it meant to be figuratively, this is how it's personified, but it's not actually what it was like? I mean, it was something completely different, a scientific reason or whatever. So that's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to decipher, is this figurative or is this literal? By what I understand about Hinduism, since it's so diverse and there's so many philosophies in it, I'm fairly certain, probably, most likely to not, that there's multiple opinions on that question that I just asked, and multiple answers from different sectors of Hinduism. Um, I find it interesting that Brahma, which is apparently part of that creation creation story, I find it interesting that each Brahma is created for each universe, which then creates life on that universe, but then it's ultimately destroyed again when it to me it's not surprising because it follows this idea of reincarnation that Hinduism purports. Like it does follow this idea of cycles. Like it follows a cycle. It follows a continual cycle that repeats itself and continues on and on and on. So it does fit within what I understand to be Hinduism's concept of reincarnation. I just never heard anything quite like it. So this is all kind of new to me. This is all kind of new. What's interesting is like things like Islam or Judaism stuff. There's some familiarity there because as a Christian, like there's a lot of overlap. Hinduism is very unique to me because I don't have as much context for it. So I'm trying to figure this all out. Well, Chuggabug's in the chat. How you doing, Chuggabug? Welcome to this live stream. Is this the Hindu origin story? Creation story, I guess, because I mean Hinduism as a religion that originated would probably have multiple answers to that. But in regard to Hindu tradition, mythology, or understanding of how the universe was created, that's what this is all about. How was the universe created according to Hinduism? Who wrote this doctrine? Do you mean the creation stories in reference to Hinduism? Like who wrote those? If I understand correctly, these creation stories are coming from the Vedas, which the Vedas are like the holy texts of Hindus. I think they have a couple other texts. Like I know they have some long epics and things that they also reference to. But by I understand, this is probably coming from the Vedas. And the Vedas, no one really the Vedas don't have one specific author. The Vedas come from a group of people that were, I think they lived north of India and then they eventually migrated down to India and then it became part of India's culture, Hinduism specifically. So by what I understand, no one really knows who wrote. There's not a specific author who wrote the Vedas, and no one really knows for sure where they came from because the history of the Vedas is actually quite convoluted. So I'm not sure exactly who wrote these. I don't think anyone really knows for sure. They know the group of people generally who wrote them or passed them down, but there's multiple authors in this regard, by what I understand. Doing good. Thanks for asking. Awesome. So, anyway, Lord Vishnu is responsible for the continuation of life according to Hinduism.
The representation of our temporary physical universe, while Vishnu is the representation of the eternal multiverse that exists forever without any beginning or end. The current universe represented by Brahma is not permanent. In fact, it's quite temporary. Brahma only lives for 100 years and then he dies and a new universe will be born. Now, let's talk about
I was about to say, I was like, wait, Lord Brahma only lives for 100 years and then he dies and another universe is born. I was like, wait, 100 years? I was like, wait a minute, we've been on this earth for thousands of years. So I was a bit confused there. Hopefully they explained that to me. I was thrown for a loop. I was going to throw some mad questions out there.
Brahma lives for 100 years and each year of Brahma has 360 days. And we are currently on the first day of the 51st year of his reign.
Wait. Hold up. What mad math are we doing here? So the life of Brahma. So according to what I understand about Hinduism, Brahma is a personification of our current universe. I'm trying to follow the logic of this video. I'm trying to break it down, see if I understand what they're saying. According to Hinduism, obviously this is all according to Hinduism. Brahma lives for 100 years. Okay, so conceptually, Brahma, the universe, lives for 100 years in some way, regard. And each year of Brahma has 360 days. So it doesn't have 365 days, it has 360 days. Okay, and we're currently on the first day of the 51st year of his reign. All right, so if we're on the 51st year of his reign, and I'm going to assume that they're using they're using modern day secular scientific reasoning, then the 51st year reign would be what, 6 to 8 billion years? Wait, let me look up how old this universe is. I'm trying to do some mad mental math. How old is the universe? 13.8 billion years old, 14 billion. Okay, whatever. We're gonna go with 14 billion years. Let's just assume. Now, obviously, I probably have some young Earthers out there and stuff like that. I don't really necessarily fall into either camp. I don't actually really care that much. Let's just say that they're assuming that the universe is 14 billion years old, and we're about halfway. So, 100 years of Brahma is 28 billion years roughly. 27 to 28 billion years roughly. In our time frame, in our understanding of time. Okay. I don't know exactly how they got this. I don't know exactly how they got these numbers. I'm not sure how they know we're in the 51st year of his reign. They didn't really say why or how they got to that conclusion. I'm curious to see how they plays out. But so what? If 28 billion years would be 100 years in his time frame, every year would be 28 billion divided by 100. 280 million. 28. So would it be 28 million years in our time would be 1 year in Brahma's time, according to Hinduism logic. Okay, I'm going to go and assume that. So is Brahma the main god or Krishna? That's a good question. I think so based on the beginning of this video, it said Lord Vishnu is the multiverse, is a personification of the multiverse, which is eternal. So I'm assuming Lord Vishnu is the main god. Brahma happens to be created and dies and recreated again every time Vishnu breathes, apparently. So I think Vishnu is the main god, but Brahma's like the main god of our universe, I guess. Again, this is all new to me. I'm trying to really learn this. I've been only studying Hinduism for the past few weeks, so I'm trying to wrap my brain around what they're trying to say here. Again, like I said earlier, as a Christian, Judaism and Islam, even though they are unique and different in their own ways, I have some context for that because Christianity has a lot of overlap with those two religions. Hinduism is very unique. It's just a whole different way of understanding the world, a whole different mythology and everything. So I'm just trying to understand how they see the world. Again, the purpose of this channel is try to understand other ways of seeing how other people see things and have a better understanding of that. So let's go. Anyway, let's move forward.
On the first day of the
hi, by the way. Hello, Amberine. Welcome to the chat.
51st year of his reign. There are day and night. During the day, Brahma creates life, and during the night, all life he created is absorbed back into him. Therefore, we will only be there for this day of Brahma, which is the first day of his 51st year. But don't be sad. Let me promise you that this is quite a long day.
It would have to be a long day.
Yug. Large units of time. Think of Yug as a unit of time that is measured in thousands to millions of years. The Vishnu Puran, an ancient Hindu text, has details about these Yug measurements. A Mahayug is made up of 4 sub-yugs that are distributed in the ratio of 4:3, 3:2, 2:1. In a Mahayug, the Kali Yug is the shortest yug and lasts for 432,000 solar years, followed by the Dwapar Yug, which is twice as long as 864,000 years. Then there's Treta Yug at 12,96,000 years, and finally the Satyug, which is 17,28,000 years. So in all, a Mahayug on Earth lasts for 4.32 million years. Manvantar.
Wait. So, are they saying that every year of Brahma is 4.32 million years? That wouldn't add up. Anyway, okay.
Manvantar.
I'm curious how this
The
works
next
out.
major unit of time after a Mahayug in ancient Indian text is called Manvantar. At the beginning of a Manvantar, new life forms are created, and at the end of it, those life forms are destroyed. This is how the cycle of life goes on in the ancient Indian texts. One Manvantar is said to last for 71 Mahayug or 71
I really feel like I need to be a mathematician right now. I'm really trying hard to understand this mathematics that they're throwing at me right now. I'm trying to keep up here. Math has, I've always been good at math, but it was one of my least favorite subjects. So I'm trying to keep up. I don't know. Maybe some of you are out there smarter than I am at math, but let's see how this plays out.
multiplied by 4.32 million years. This works out to be around 306.72 million years in total. According to these ancient texts, all life on Earth will eventually be destroyed after 306.72 million years of evolution.
Whoa. Okay. So, how old is the Earth? Again, this is going to be interesting because traditionally speaking, from a secular scientific standpoint, it's going to be millions of years old. But some religious people would argue that it's young and only a few thousand years old. But I'm just going to say that according to Hinduism, that they're using millions and billions of years. So I'm just assuming that they're assuming the secular scientific understanding of the age of the Earth. 4.5 billion. Earth was formed over 4.5 billion years ago. How long ago did life form on Earth? 3.5 billion years ago. So every 380 million years, they're suggesting that life has disappeared off Earth. So 3 times for every billion, so about 3 times every billion years, you would have a mass extinction of some sorts. You would have to have, 12 to 15 mass extinctions throughout Earth's history? I wonder, I'm just really curious if the scientific community in general has some sort of consensus about this sort of reasoning. I'm sure Hindu scientists and philosophers would try to argue that it does, but I'm just kind of curious.
Interestingly, around 252 million years ago, the Earth experienced its largest mass extinction event. Most species on Earth were killed, including nearly 90% to 96% of all insects.
Also, I've always been curious, having never necessarily delved too deep into the topic. I've always been curious how they predict these things. Like, how does one scientist, or not one scientist, but how do scientists in general reason to the fact that, roughly 250 million years ago, there was a mass extinction event? None of us were around. It's been that long that it's hard for me to completely understand how you're getting your data for this. I can understand how you may say something something big and huge happened at a certain area. Maybe there's a big divot in the ground. You're like, this came from a meteor, or perhaps there's layers that looks like there used to be a waterfall there or something, but it's just dry land now, like the Grand Canyons. I'm not entirely sure how they always come to their conclusion of 250 million years ago was a mass extinction event. How did they know this? What type of reasoning do they use? What type of information? It's hard for me. When I hear stuff like that, there's a level of skepticism to me. I'm like, how do you actually know that? And also, having studied some of these things, having looked at evolutionary theory and stuff, there's a lot of assumptions that get built into evolutionary theory. There's a lot of assumptions that get built into these scientific proportions of these scientific theories that may or may not be true, but most scientists just assume they would be true. So I'm always a little bit skeptical of things like that. But anyway, we're just going to take their word for it on this one.
This was also the only mass extinction period of insects on Earth. After each mass extinction of life forms, there is a period of recovery called Sandhikal. This period lasts for one Satyug or 1.728 million years. According to the latest estimates from modern science, it is believed that it took around 10 million years for life on Earth to recover after the Permian-Triassic extinction event. As you can see, it took our planet 10 million years to get back to its feet after suffering the greatest mass extinction in history. Kalp, Day of the Brahma or Universe. The universe has a day too. Just like our day on Earth is called Kalp, the time period for one Kalp is said to be equivalent to 14 Manvantars and the Sandhi Kal. So, there are
The hardest part of this religion is math. I'm curious. I honestly am curious. Again, so she at one point referenced to an ancient Hindu text. I'm curious if this Hindu text laid out all this math, or did the Hindu text actually lay out like 100, like for instance, like 100 years Brahma lives, and every like that little segment that she showed there, where it's like 100 years Brahma lives, and every breath creates and destroys the universe. Like I feel like that's from the Veda text or from the Hindu text. I wonder, there's a part of me that has to wonder if later on philosophers in the Hindu religion took those numbers and then extrapolated them to fit within a modern scientific context. I could be wrong. I don't know. But there's a part of me that's skeptical that that may have been the case. But I don't know for sure. But yes, it does seem like math is a big part of this creation story. I'm really trying to keep up here. I feel like I'm kind of out of my depth.
14 Manvantars and 15 Sandhi Kals in a Kalp. During the Sandhi Kal before the first Manvantar, no life has evolved yet. So, one Kalp equal to 14 multiplied by 306.72 million years plus 15 multiplied by 1.728 million years, which makes it one Kalp equal to 4.32 billion years. On the universal scale, one day is said to be 4.32 billion years long. This day is divided into a period of creation, where life forms are created, and a night period during which no creation takes place. Each of these periods is also 4.32 billion years long. In other words, one day of Lord Brahma on the universal scale is 8.64 billion years long. It's interesting to note that, according to modern scientific discoveries, the oldest life form on the Earth is 4.28 billion years old. Mahakalp, Kalp, a unit at universal scale, is further extended with days and years similar on Earth, so that a month at the universal scale is 30 Kalp, that is 30 universal days, and a year at the universal scale is 12 such universal months. This enables life forms to rise and fall in accordance with the karma they have earned. On the universal scale, 100 years are defined as the lifespan of a universe. This is called a Mahakalp. A universe is said to end at the end of its 100 years of age.
Why are they saying that is?
So, the lifespan of an entire universe is 8.64 multiplied by 30 multiplied by 12 multiplied by 100 billion years, which totals to around 311.
Okay, I am really confused now. Because if I'm not mistaken, they said in the beginning of the video, okay, I'm trying to keep up here. If I'm not mistaken, in the beginning of the video, they said we were in what, the 51st year according to... where am I at here? I'm at 842. They said we're in the 51st year or something like that. I forget exactly. I think they said we're in the 51st year. I forget where it was that I said that. I'm trying to see if I can find it here real quick. Anyway, I thought they said that we were in the 51st year, which to me, I'm confused, because if we were to be in the 51st year, of this 100-year cycle, and 100-year cycle is like 13 trillion, then the estimations for modern science that the universe is okay. So yeah, we live for 100 years, each probably 360 days. Currently, first day. So and we're currently on the first day of the 51st year of his reign. So we're 51 years into this 100 years of the universe's lifespan, and each year has a 360 days. So we're in the what 50. We're in the first day of the 51st year of these 360 days. So we're 51 years into this first day of this, which should lead us to half of what we're at 840, which should lead us to
multiplied by 100 billion years, which
would mean that the universe should be, according to that math, if a lifespan of the entire universe is 100 years, which equates to 311.04 trillion years, the universe then should be, in theory, 156 trillion years old. And according to modern science, if I remember correctly, how old is the universe? 13.8 billion years old? 14 billion years old seems to be the estimate. At least, definitely not in the trillions. 20 billion years old? It doesn't look like it's in the trillions. All the estimates seem to be high billions, but not necessarily in the trillions. So, all I'm curious about, all I'm trying to figure out here is, do Hindu scientists and Hindu philosophers believe that the universe is currently 151 trillion years old? And if so, do they disagree then with the general consensus from the scientific community of the age of the universe? If so, I would be really curious to see those debates. I'd really be curious to see the information presented and the amount of debate that goes on there. Because I feel like either I am misinterpreting this math very incorrectly, and someone who's more familiar with Hinduism is gonna roast me in the comment section, or there's actually a disagreement here between Hinduism and general understanding of the scientific realm. Which one would be the first? I mean, I know people who there's the belief of the younger theory that the universe is actually only like 6,000, 10,000 years old and stuff. So like there's a young Earth, young universe theory. This is like ultra old universe theory. I have no skin in the game because like I'm not a scientist, I'm not a physicist. I'll let people hash that out. I don't know if you can even trust the modern consensus. Modern consensus in science has been wrong in the past. Modern consensus was that the Earth was at the center of the universe. We know now the sun's at the center of the universe. So modern consensus has been disproven wrong in the past. So I don't necessarily put my heart and soul in that. I just think this is interesting. There seems to be a discrepancy here going on. Maybe I stopped too soon. Maybe later in the video she'll explain all that. But anyway, so far I am trying to keep up. So far I feel like I'm out of something's going on. Mass extinction. Well, I think it's hard with finding dino bones, isn't it? And realizing that they were extinct and then understanding the layer of soils that looked like it was affected by the comet. Yeah, well, here's the other thing about science that, like, as far as theoretical science goes, there's, like, there is a general consensus in certain areas, but a lot of scientists disagree on, a lot of historians and a lot of scientists disagree on what happened once you get past several hundred years, even several hundred years ago. But once you get into the thousands of years ago, there is giant disagreement between scientists and historians as of what took place and what happened. They will generally agree on certain things. There might be a general consensus that certain things happened, but for the most part, there's actually quite a bit of discrepancy, and every person has their sort of theory on what happened throughout time because it is extremely difficult to actually know, for a matter of fact, what happened throughout the millions of years or whatever that the Earth has been around. It's extremely hard science. It's an extremely hard thing to do. And unlike other things that you can continually test, like gravity, you just kind of have to use your best understanding of what you have available and predict what happened. But yeah, so it would be hard to say. They for sure said 51st. Yeah, they did say 51st. I did prove that. Chugbug's comment about the math sounds right. Yeah. Again, the whole point of this isn't like supposed to be mockery for me. It's just like, the whole point of it is for me to try to wrap my head around this. Like, this seems... I'm also trying to figure out where they're getting these numbers from. Are they getting it directly from their Veda text? Are they getting it directly from Hindu text? or are they taking Hindu texts and then extrapolating that into bigger math, into bigger numbers? How much of this is coming from the text? How much of it is extrapolation and philosophy? I'll just be curious to understand that. I assume this is all like Sunday school stuff you learn as a kid, and then you learn the popular life lessons from the mini gods that Brahma created. I have no idea. I can't even comment on that. All I'm saying is, if I understood this correctly, there would be a discrepancy in the scientific world. Hi, welcome, Mr. Twix. Welcome to the chat. How you doing?
Totals to around 311.04 trillion years. The ancient Indian texts says that our universe is currently on the first day of its 51st year. During this day, we are in the Kali Yuga of the 28th Mahayuga.
So, according to the ancient texts, we're in the 51st year. So that's where they're getting that from, of that 100-year cycle. But that still doesn't tell me whether or not are they getting the millions and millions of years for every year that there is, like, are they getting that from the text as well? I'm assuming they are, but I don't know for sure.
Of the 7th Manvantar. So, we have come to the calculation once again. According to ancient Indian texts, the age of the universe is 50 universal years plus 6 Manvantars plus 7 Sandhi Kal plus 28 Mahayug. 50 universal years equal to 8.64 multiplied by 30 multiplied by 12 multiplied by 50 billion years.
This reminds me back of when I was in like college and in high school and stuff, and I took calculus classes and had to take derivatives and stuff like that. Like this takes me back to my school days, man. I haven't been in school for a long time. Not for a long time. Almost a year now. It's almost been a year since I've been in some sort of school setting, college specifically. So this is taking me back, man. I don't want to go back. Don't take me back to math.
Equal to 155,520 billion years.
Do they have a ballpark of when the ancient text was written? Oh man. But I would understand. So, when the Old Testament was written and when the Veda texts are estimated to have been written, I think the earliest Old Testament books, like the books of Moses, Genesis, Deuteronomy and stuff, would have been written a little bit earlier than the Veda text, but I think historians roughly estimate them to be similar. When were the Vedas written? So between 1500 and 500 BC. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, when was the Old Testament written? The Old Testament had been like 3000 to 2000 BC, I think. Maybe a little bit closer to. Okay, yeah, it is actually like almost overlap. So they average between 1660 to 400 BC. So yeah, some of the oldest Old Testament books would have been written maybe a couple hundred years before the Vedas. So think Old Testament time period, roughly. Early Old Testament time period would have been sort of when these Hindu texts would have been written, supposedly. Like, again, but I would also understand the Hindu texts weren't necessarily written until... But I understand a lot of these Hindu texts are believed to have been oral traditions for a while. Like, they were orally passed down. They were shared stories among their community. And then they were eventually written down later. So who knows how long these stories have been circulating before they were written down. But yeah, so early Old Testament time period, I guess, would be the ballpark.
6 Manvantars. 6 multiplied by 306.72 million years equal to 1840.32 million years. 7 Sandhi Kal. 7 multiplied by 1.728 million years equal to 12.096
Are they trying to calculate the current age of our universe?
million years. 28 Mahayug. 28 multiplied by 4.32 million years equal to 120.96 million years. So, the age of the universe, as per ancient Hindu texts, is 157.
Okay, I was right. It is about 157 trillion years
Modern
old.
science tells us that the universe is around 13.799 billion years old. However, ancient Indian texts predict a much longer timeline. Ancient Indian texts says that the age of the universe is around 311 trillion years. This video is only an attempt to appreciate the great scale of time on which ancient Indians were working. We do not come across any other ancient civilizations.
So, okay, so that's interesting. So she does recognize the fact that there's a discrepancy between the current consensus and what the texts say. And obviously this is going to get into a debate of whether or not who's right and who's wrong. And again, I'm sure there's been Hindu scientists who have argued for a scientific understanding, the scientific reason for the 311 trillion years. I'm sure if I looked into it, I could find debates on that. We do not come across any other ancient civilizations that talk in terms of billions or trillions of years of calculations. That may or may not be true. No idea. Although I would say that I doubt that many other religions cared that much in regard to time frame of the creation of the universe or time frame as of how old the world was. A lot of religions within their texts focus more on teaching. So like let's just take for instance the Tao Te Ching from Taoism. It's all philosophy. It doesn't really care about the creation of the universe. Islam, within the Quran stuff, it does give some accounts of age of the universe. It does give some account of the creation things. But that isn't like the main focus at all. Within the biblical narrative, it can be interpreted both literally and figuratively depending on who's reading it. But again, the creation story is in the very beginning, but from there on out, it's not referenced very much. It's not the main focus, and there isn't a lot of time spent delving into how old the Earth is. There's not a lot of time spent delving into time frames because that's not the central meaning of the text. That's in the central purpose of the text. So I wouldn't be shocked that most religious books, most ancient texts don't talk about the age of the universe and things like that, simply because it wasn't really a concern. It wasn't the purpose of those texts. The purpose of those texts were to convey something else. It may have been that this ancient civilization, it was important to them. Math and age of the universe and creation was a lot more important to them than it was to other civilizations. For whatever reason, I'm not sure. Do they have I'm losing a lot of respect for the word ancient. What does that mean? Why are you losing respect for the word ancient? I'm kind of curious what you mean by that.
That talk in terms of billions or trillions of years of calculations with specific names given to such large periods of time. Like the famous American cosmologist Carl Sagan said in his book Cosmos, the Hindu religion is the only one of the world's great faiths dedicated to the idea that the cosmos itself undergoes an immense, indeed an infinite, number of deaths and rebirths. It is the only religion in which the time scales correspond to those of modern scientific cosmology. Its cycles run from our ordinary day and night to a day and night of Brahma, 8.64 billion years long, longer than the age of the Earth.
I'm confused by this quote for a few reasons. One, she already admitted that modern cosmology disagrees with the age of the universe according to Hinduism. So by a drastic number, to say that 14 billion years is even close to similar to 150 trillion years, that's a stretch. Like, that's a pretty big stretch that you really have to make there. So, one, that's a really bold claim, considering there's trillions of years of difference between modern cosmology and Hinduism understanding of the age of the universe. I don't really understand how you can make that comparison very reasonably. I mean, you could argue that there is this understanding of cycle and death and stuff in Hinduism, which may not be quite as present in other religions. Maybe that's the case. To say that it perfectly aligns with modern cosmology, like I guess there would be referencing that 250 million years ago, like the extinction, that type of stuff. Again, to me, the only problem I have with that is this is getting very once you get into the millions of years ago, you get very theoretical. And when I've read certain papers in science and stuff, in some of my science classes, there's a lot of built-in assumptions that may or may not be true. I'll give you one, for example. So carbon dating. Let's just take carbon dating as an example. The how carbon dating works is you take a look at natural life forms have a certain amount of carbon per, I forget exactly what the number is, but life forms have a certain amount of carbon in their bodies. And after a living organism dies, carbon decays. It slowly decays. And scientists have studied how the carbon decays, And notice that it seems to follow a exponential rate, meaning it slowly decays, but then eventually slowly increases in its decaying rate until it goes like this. So like that's what an exponential formula goes like. And they assume, and here's the assumption in carbon dating. The assumption in carbon dating is that this trend continues forever and ever. They don't assume that it ever leaves an exponential rate. They assume it stays an exponential rate, and therefore they extrapolate from studying carbon for a few years, maybe a decade or two. I'm not even sure how long they necessarily studied carbon to figure out that it decays at this rate. After a few years of studying the decay of carbon, seeing that it seems to follow an exponential rate, they extrapolate that this carbon decays at an exponential rate for its entirety. It always does that for millions of years. And then just assume, based on carbon dating, that things are millions of years old on that premise. But you can't prove beyond a shadow of doubt that carbon actually decomposes at an exponential rate forever. It may or may not. It could. It may decay at an exponential rate within a short time period, but then change, or something may go wrong at some point. You have to assume that it continues to go that way. So there's a lot of built-in assumptions when it comes to scientific reasoning in regard to ancient times, or into faraway times, or into millions of years past. So one, it's hard for me to believe that it perfectly aligns with modern cosmology when there's a drastic difference. And two, when you get into those long time frames, there's a lot of different theories. There's a lot of different theories and timelines presented by different scientists and PhD people. So that's a really hard statement for me to accept at face value. I feel like the only reason they respect the text at all is because it's really old. She keeps emphasizing its ancient age being the key factor. Yeah, I think, to their credit, I think the reason why the idea that it's ancient is being emphasized is because there is this notion within religions in general that something is so old but yet predicts things that are relevant to today. Because the whole purpose of religion is to be relevant for a lifetime, for humankind. And so let's just take, you take something like the Bible, the Quran, anything. It's an ancient text. It's been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And it's relevant to humans now because that's what religion believes that their religion is relevant to all humankind up until the revelation ceases to be necessary. And so the emphasis on the text being ancient is an emphasis of, look, it's still relevant to today. It's still accurate to modern day science. It's still relevant to the human experience. It's still relevant to what we understand about the universe. And it's ancient. This means that before we had modern science, before we had modern intellect, people were able to have these revelations. These revelations must be divine because there wouldn't be any other way to explain how much knowledge these ancient texts have without saying they are divine or miraculous. That would be the general case that would be made as of why you would continually emphasize the ancientness of the text and then comparing it to how it aligns well with modern understanding and concepts and morality and things like that. So that's why I think she's emphasizing the fact that it's ancient. It's a common thing done by all religions. If you look at Islam, they will emphasize the fact that there's knowledge in the Quran that couldn't have been known at that time. It's an ancient text. Same thing with the Bible. You'll see apologists say that there's prophecies and that there's miracles in the Bible that couldn't have been known besides divine understanding, since it's an ancient text. So I think that's why she's emphasizing the fact that it's ancient. But anyway, all that to say,
sun and about half the time since the Big Bang. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this video. If you liked it, like, comment.
I didn't realize I was signing up for a calculus class today when I tuned in on the creation of the universe according to Hinduism. I didn't realize how in depth it goes into. And based on that comment she made at the end, I guess the ancient texts do reference it into billions and trillions of years, which wouldn't be shocking to me because one of the stories I read regarding Lord Krishna said that he danced for like 4 billion years one night. So they've operated in billions and trillions of years, I think, in a lot of their stories. Again, it's not shocking because of their understanding of karma, rebirth, and recycle and things like that. But yeah. So Sacramento today. What if all religious texts were equally scientifically accurate according to modern science? Which one are we supposed to believe in then? Good question. So here's the thing. One, that question's already assuming that this is a hypothetical. The one problem with hypotheticals is that they're normally not true. You can hypothetically say, like, hypothetically, if everyone was a prophet who had a revelation, what does that mean for us today? Like, so hypotheticals to me have always been a little bit suspect because they generally aren't true. Hypotheticals in general aren't true. But if I were to humor someone to present the hypothetical like this one, where it's saying, well, hypothetically, if all of them have equal modern science, how are we supposed to know what to believe in then? I would say a couple things. One, I think you would have to look at other key factors. So something may be so even if all three of them were in alignment, let's just say all religious texts were in alignment with modern day science to an equal degree. Then you would have to look at other factors. You would have to look at one, historical factors. Are these documents historically reliable? Can we track kind of where they came from? Can we understand sort of their background? Is there anything that's miraculous about them, perhaps, in their history? You would have to look at it from different angles. You have to look at it from a historical standpoint. You would have to look at it from a philosophical standpoint. Is it consistent with itself? Or is it self-contradictory? Is there contradicting elements within this religion or within this ancient text? And when I say contradictions, I don't mean paradoxes or things that are hard to understand or on face value may appear to be contradictions. I'm saying like there are deeply held beliefs and proponents of this text that literally cannot coincide together. It's just impossible for them to coincide together. So you would have to look at some sort of level of philosophical consistency. There would also be the experiential. You have to look at the experiential. Do I see in my experience that this makes sense, that this is true? So I mean, what I mean by that is like within your own personal life and your observations how the world works and how people behave and things like that. Does this religion or does this ancient text actually align well with the human experience? Does it actually align well with what commonly takes place or what I can observe happens in the world? And also personal experience can also include maybe something miraculous in your life, like you pray to God that you reveal to me what religion is true and you have some sort of vision or something. Again, this isn't necessarily to say that hard in stone, this is how you know for sure something's true in regard to religious situation. But these are some evidences, some ways you can reason yourself to understanding whether or not an ancient text is trustworthy outside of whether or not it aligns with modern scientific understanding. So you can look at history, the historical, the philosophical, and experiential would be the three key factors to look into. And whichever ancient text I think would make the most sense out of all three categories, not just one, not just the other, but all three categories, which one makes probably the most sense and has the most evidence on its side, would probably be the best bet, would be the best thing to put your faith in until further evidence proves itself to prove one way or the other. That would be my general approach, I would say. I mean, generally, that's how I try to approach religions in general. I try to approach them from different factors like that. The historical, the philosophical, the experiential. Honestly, I'm going to be scientifically, like, I think it's interesting to a certain extent, but I don't necessarily rely heavily on scientific evidence on whether or not something religious is true. Because religions in general aren't interested in science as much as they are interested in philosophical, existential, and metaphysical truths in the human experience and historical narratives. So, in general, religions aren't interested in pure scientific understanding. They're more interested in the philosophical world and the metaphysical world. So I don't generally look towards science to understand what to believe and what not to believe in regard to religion. Because I just don't think generally that's what they are interested in the most part. But I would say that's probably would be that's how I would try to generally reason my way through that question. Again, but I don't like dealing necessarily with hypotheticals because generally hypotheticals aren't true. There's also a carbon-dated manuscript from the Quran in Birmingham. Why wouldn't you just go to the oldest text why wouldn't you just go by the oldest text is the correct one and assume that the rest are inspired by it? Well, there's a few flaws with that reasoning. One, you'd have to assume that the oldest text we find is by necessity the oldest text to have ever existed. And what I mean by that is we can only have we have evidence of certain historical texts, but presumably there's other historical texts that have been lost to time. So you would have to assume that that oldest historical text that we currently have is the oldest historical text. And it'd be very hard to prove that beyond a shadow of a doubt. Secondly, just because a historical text is very old, even if it may be the oldest historical text, it doesn't actually mean that that historical text is accurate. Let's just take, for instance, let's just say, presumably, that the universe, let's just say humankind was created by God, God or gods or whatever. Let's just take the traditional understanding of like a lot of Abrahamic religions, where you say Adam and Eve were created, and let's just say supposedly that the earliest text ever written was written by, I don't know, Cain, who killed his brother, and for some odd reason it was preserved for thousands of years, and it's the oldest text. And he wrote this whole thing about how murder's good, and he also wrote about how, about a bunch of things. And you read it, and even though it's the oldest text, it has a lot of philosophical flaws, a lot of moral problems, a lot of issues. Just because it's old doesn't mean it's true, doesn't mean it's accurate. Something could have been written a little bit later and been more accurate and more honest to the truth. That was completely disassociated from the oldest text. Because, again, you're also assuming that texts following the oldest text were influenced by it, when that may not be the case. There have been many things written throughout history that are completely disconnected from other ancient texts, but have overlap and similarities, even though they were in two different worlds and had never interacted with each other at all. It is possible. So there's a lot of flaws within that reasoning, that just use the oldest text. That isn't necessarily true. That would be assuming a lot of things that may or may not be the case. I wouldn't say that's great reasoning. I saw this one on one show on YouTube about Prophet Muhammad being in the Hindu manuscripts at Quran the other day. Check it out. Okay. I'd be interested in seeing that. Now, here's the thing. Here's the one thing that's interesting is that things like the Bible, things like the Vedas and things, they're so long and so many verses and stuff. You can pretty much find anything and try to make it fit within your understanding of the world to a certain extent. So sometimes I'm a little bit skeptical of those things, but I can go check it out. Because I have seen some videos about Muhammad being found in the Bible, and I've looked at those verses and I didn't find them that compelling. But I could check it out and see what it says about that. Not that I believe in it, but it was an interesting watch. Yeah. Again, I do take a little bit. There's a high level of skepticism on my end, because generally speaking, what happens is when I've seen those type of videos, they take a verse and they read that verse. Maybe it's a couple verses. Maybe they do give a little bit of context, but oftentimes the full context doesn't necessarily favor that interpretation of the text. And secondly, there's generally another interpretation of the text that's just as equally valid, and so it's kind of hard to always make the distinction. But I can go check it out and see what it says. It'll be interesting, I guess. Can you organize your live stream and playlist as you explore deeper into each religion? Like, this could be one of the first for Hinduism. I could do that as an organization tactic on my channel and break it down more. It's kind of crazy because, like, since I do pretty much everything by myself, I have to figure out what I'm doing along the way and piece it all together. But yeah, that's actually not a bad idea. That could be a good idea for structuring my channel in a way that's more organized and effective. But yeah, so that's been about an hour. It's almost 8 o'clock. I'm going to be heading out here. So thank you everyone for tuning in. As always, if you like these videos, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to join the Light the World community, where we explore and engage with different religions, entertain you guys, have some fun with it, and educate you guys. Hopefully you come away with a new perspective or learning something new altogether. But thank you everyone for tuning in. Share this channel with your friends, family, all that jazz. And as always, go out there and light the world, my friends.